We need to reach that middle audience, people who are moderates, people who have young daughters who know this is instinctually, they know this is wrong, but they're hung up on being compassionate or inclusive or empathetic, or those words that they use all the time on the other side to really pull at your heartstrings. Getting to them and saying, well, what about us as young girls? Who's been compassionate to us? Is it really inclusion to ask us to smile and step aside and allow these men onto our podiums? Is that what inclusion looks like to you?
Hey, Joyful Warriors. Tiffany Justice here with the Joyful Warrior podcast, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Riley Gaines, who is a true role model for girls and women alike. Riley has stood in this time where we find ourselves in America to be, I think of it like upside down world. And Riley continues to be a beacon of light. So many people want to hear from her. She travels across the country speaking. And as a mom of a daughter, I can personally say I'm very excited to talk to her today. So Riley's out with a new book, Swimming Against the Current, Fighting for Common Sense in a World That's Lost Its Mind. If you haven't ordered it yet, order it. And Riley, welcome to the Joyful Warrior podcast.
Well, thank you. I am just thrilled to be on with you. What you have been able to do and build and develop this movement behind you and your group is just amazing. And I appreciate the work that you guys do. So the honor is mine.
Oh, well, thank you. I've been so impressed to see your dedication to this work. And you're a very disciplined person. I was looking on Twitter yesterday, and I think you said you did some type of a challenge. So first of all, explain that to the audience. What were you up to yesterday?
I did. I did the obligatory Murph, which is, it's a workout intended to honor a fallen veteran, someone who, of course, fought for this country, who ended up losing his life fighting for this country. And the workout that he did daily, was a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then another mile run. And so I did this. And let me tell you, Tiffany, I am so sore. My armpits hurt from all the pull-ups. Like my back hurts, my legs hurt.
And you're a pretty good athlete.
Oh, but that was no joke. I took it very seriously, which is the competitor in me, as you say. And so I'm hurting. But even still, nonetheless, this morning I went to work out, and it's the most wonderful thing. Every morning I work out with my mom, my dad, my younger sister, my older sister, and my grandma. And so we do that at 5 a.m. every single morning.
Wow.
Every morning I'm home at least. So
that's great, Riley. So let's talk a little bit about growing up for you. During COVID, I remember I was outside of a school building with my daughter. She had just gotten quarantined, and one of her friends, who was a swimmer, had also gotten quarantined. Healthy girls. And she had been, they think she was a junior. And there was a big swim meet that weekend. And of course, now she had been quarantined, so she was going to have to miss that swim meet. And she was sobbing. And, her mom just looked at me and said, all the years of working and practice to be at this competitive level in swimming and to have this taken away. And so, in that moment, I look at, let's just talk a little bit about what it's like to be a competitive swimmer in high school, to get to the, and college, to get to the level where you have done your work.
Well, gosh, let me just say, I know that feeling all too well, of course, from the perspective of dedicating your entire life to it, really. And I don't exaggerate when I say my entire life, which is not unique to just me. Started swimming when I was 4 years old, graduated when I was 22. So, I dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport, which of course includes, you don't get to go to prom. You don't get to have sleepovers with your friends on Friday night because guess what? You have practice at 6 a.m. on Saturday. You don't get to go on family vacations where the rest of your siblings all get to go because you have to stay home and practice 2 times a day, oftentimes, especially once you get to the high school level. And then you go, if you're fortunate enough to compete at the collegiate level, oh my gosh, I thought I worked hard before college. I was wrong. This was a different kind of working hard. We were in the water 6 hours every single day, with 3 of those hours being before 8 a.m. So again, just a view of what our day looked like. You'd get to the pool, practice at 5 a.m., swim till 8 a.m. Straight from concluding practice, you would go to class. You would come back to the pool. Very brief lunch, practice again from 1:30 to 4:30. Ate your dinner, did your homework, iced your shoulders, went to bed. You woke up, you did it all again the next day.
Busy.
So to say it was hard work and sacrifices were made would be an understatement, really. And then dealing with COVID, that was the most miserable thing ever.
So what
Of
year
course,
were you when COVID hit? What year were you? 2020, March 2020. You were
that was the end of my sophomore year.
Yeah.
End of my sophomore year. And so we were set to leave for our national championships in March of 2020, which is when everything
the world shut down.
Yes. And so 3 days before we were supposed to leave, the meet you work all year for, the meet you work all your life for, the pinnacle of collegiate swimming. 3 days before we were supposed to leave, we got shut down. We got sent home, which was, you never got sent home in your sport. So definitely an adjustment. And then coming back and dealing with the social distancing and the contact tracing and the mandatory mask and the mandatory vaccines, which how many people listening have seen a swimmer in the water wearing a mask? No, but they certainly tried. We essentially waterboarded ourselves every day.
So stupid. So, that happens, right? So we have COVID happen. And then Riley, then explain to me how you kind of get thrust into this world of men competing in women's athletics, how you find yourselves in a pool with a boy pretending to be a girl.
So, of course, COVID hit sophomore year. We were eventually able to come back junior year. My junior year is when ultimately I placed 7th in the nation. That was my overall final ranking, which I was proud of this. It wasn't my best time. I knew I could do better. So it was right then and there that I placed 7th in the country my junior year that I set a goal for my senior year to win a national title, which would, of course, mean becoming the fastest woman in the country in my respective event. And so senior year rolls around, and I'm right on pace to achieve this goal. I was ranked 3rd in the nation behind the girl in 2nd, a girl I knew very well, trailing her by a few 100tenths of a second maybe. But the swimmer who was leading the nation, by body lengths, might I add, was a swimmer that none of us had heard of before. Not me, not my coaches, not my teammates, not my other competitors, not my family. None of us had heard of this person. And this is the first time we became aware of a swimmer named Lia Thomas. Lots of red flags at the time. Keep in mind, we had no idea that this was anything other than a female. It was never even something that remotely crossed my mind, despite the fact that this was a senior, which was very odd, from University of Pennsylvania, which has never been a school that has ever historically produced that caliber of a swimmer, leading the nation by body lengths in events ranging from the 100 freestyle, which is a sprint, and all of the freestyle events in between through the mile, which is long distance. So much about it didn't make sense. But again, we really continued to stay in the dark until an article finally came out disclosing that Lia Thomas is actually Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at UPenn before deciding to switch to the women's team. And when I read this, naturally, I was stunned. I was baffled. I was shocked. We all were. But really, upon reading it, I felt this sense of relief. Like, oh, duh, it's a man. That's why this person is excelling in the way that they are, is because they aren't a woman. And I thought that's how the NCAA would see it, especially given the fact that he was less than average as a man competing against the men. But lo and behold, the NCAA did not. They saw nothing wrong with this. And so about 3 weeks before our national championships in March of 2022, they announced that Thomas's participation in the women's category was a non-negotiable, meaning there was nothing that we could do as female athletes.
And what is it like for you at this moment, like on your team? Like, okay, so your team, is the whole team just shocked? Is there any internal conflict about like, oh, maybe this is okay on your team? I'm just curious.
I think going into the meet, we didn't understand the severity of what this would look like. I mean, really how we felt And I say we because I really am speaking. I was team captain of my team. So I made sure to have these conversations. And of the 40 girls that were on University of Kentucky's women's swim team, 38 of them feel the exact same way that I'm sharing with you. But I think going into the meet, we all knew it was wrong, okay? But admittedly, there was almost like a sense of intriguement behind it. I mean, we had so many questions, it felt like this weird like circus moment. Is he going to be as tall as he looks in Instagram pictures? Will he sandbag it? Will he be changing in the locker room with us? I don't think we understood the harm that would be had until we actually were on that pool deck with this man towering over the rest of us, beating us without even trying. That's when I think those feelings of curiosity, still knowing it was wrong. Don't get me wrong. We knew it was a farce, but those feelings of curiosity shifted entirely to heartbreak, and they shifted to demoralization. It felt like we had been, speaking for myself specifically, it felt like I had been punched in the gut watching Thomas that first day swim prelims. Of course, you swim prelims, qualify top 16, you have to come back for finals where you'll achieve your overall national ranking. And so I'm watching that morning in the event that was the 500 freestyle, so not an event that I do. And I'm watching him swim prelims, 8 heats or so of girls. He's in the last heat, indicating he was the top seeded in the event, dominating, beating everyone by body lengths. And I was sat next to a girl from Virginia Tech. She had just swam one of the earlier heats. She knew she was going to be on the cusp of making top 16. And she watches this last heat conclude. She watches Thomas win. She looks up at the scoreboard to see where she placed, and she got 17th. Mm-hmm. And I will never forget, Tiffany, she looked at me, and I didn't even know her that well. And she grabs my hand, and she has tears running down her face. And she says, I just got beat by someone who didn't even have to try. And it was that moment. I remember distinctly, that is when I realized, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger than I think we even realize in this moment.
That's a lot for young girls to have to deal with. I mean, and I remember seeing you and Paula Scanlon, right? Who was on Will Thomas's team. And hearing you guys talk about, hearing Paula talk about like the locker room situation. So, here you are watching all of this hard work evaporate. And then you guys would have to go back into a locker room situation with a man who, as I understand it, was like changing in front of the girls. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, as crazy as it sounds, you are absolutely right. And again, for perspective, for optics purposes here, this is a 6'4" man, a Goliath of a man, towering over every other girl in that locker room, who walks in with his women's practice suit on, one piece, takes it off, fully naked, fully intact, fully exposed, inches away from where we were simultaneously fully undressed. It was feelings of, of course it's awkward, it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable. It was inherent, it was innate for every girl in that changing space to cover themselves.
Yeah.
Whether it was with their hands or their towels or their clothes, and to get out of the locker room as quickly as they could. Even the girls who were seemingly supportive of him competing against us, still in the locker room atmosphere, the discomfort was blatantly obvious and felt. It felt like betrayal. It felt like belittlement. It felt like an utter violation.
Yeah.
And really, it was traumatizing. And not even necessarily traumatizing because of what we were forced to see or how we were forcibly exploited. It was traumatizing for me to know just how easy it was for those people who created and enforced these policies to totally dismiss our rights to privacy without even a second thought.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. When I was on school board, there was a student who considered themselves to be transgender in the high school. And I remember that the superintendent worked with the school, and they had a private bathroom. They had private bathroom access for that student to be able to use another bathroom. And that student was fine with that and did use that bathroom. But what I realized as I saw this spread out across the United States as children are thinking of themselves as transgender, that they don't want a special bathroom. It's not about having a special dedicated space or making an accommodation. It's about centering that and normalizing a boy in the girls' locker room. And so just the idea that Will was comfortable with it, right? That he, I mean, what was he getting out of that to be a fully intact male in a space with a lot of other young women? I mean, I would imagine that was kind of running through your mind too a little bit.
Of course. And it's something I think about now. Admittedly, at the time, I didn't know a whole lot about gender dysphoria. I mean, I didn't know, of course, this is never something I experienced. No one in my life around me. Growing up in Tennessee, this wasn't something that was ever a concern for really anyone in my community for what I knew at the time. Now, of course, things have shifted over the past 4 or 5 years or so. But now, reading more about gender dysphoria, what that looks like, my understanding is someone who is truly gender dysphoric would not feel comfortable showing his naked male parts in a woman's locker room to a bunch of also naked women because you're dysphoric about that, which leads me to believe, and actually what Thomas has confirmed on social media and liking different things and posting different things, is that let's be very clear. What he is not a gynophiliac, which is, abbreviated as AGP, which just means you're sexually aroused as dressing as a woman. That's what we were being exposed to at the hands of the NCAA. Everyone who went along with this farce, we were being forced to participate in his fetish, is what we were doing.
I'm going to switch gears for a second because when I listen to Chloe Cole, who's a detransitioner, and if those of you who listen to the Joyful Warrior podcast know I've spoken about Chloe before. At 15 years old, she had both of her breasts removed, and she's since detransitioned. But when I was listening to Chloe talk, some people are asking questions, and they said, "What can I do to help to make sure my daughter doesn't fall into this?" And she said, "I think if I had been more involved in sports or had more interest, that I wouldn't have found this to be so appealing." And so, for all the parents that are listening right now and are thinking, "Gosh, Riley's an amazing athlete. It seems like it's given you a real sense of purpose and discipline in life." And I watch you even in your work and what you do, and the pace at which you work is definitely influenced by your dedication. Right. And so
Totally.
advice for parents that want to get their girls involved in sports and how to foster a love of sports.
I love this question. And it's not a question that really I don't think I've ever been asked. But yes, oh my gosh, I accredit so much of my success, so much of my leadership really to playing sports. Playing sports, like I said, it taught me how to be a leader. It taught me how to set goals and work to achieve those goals. It taught me time management. It taught me how to be resilient and how to persevere. It taught me, it gave me my best friends is what it did. Friendships that will serve me for a lifetime. It gave me my husband. I could not encourage parents or female athletes, male athletes, whoever you are, regardless of any other identity factor. Every single person should play sports. And I think it's important to mention something that we're accused of all the time, and I'm sure I can lump you guys in here, is that we want to ban people who identify as trans from competing in sports altogether. No, that's not what we want to do. That's not what's happening. There is no ban at any level implemented by any governing body that outright bans people who identify as trans from competing in sports. Are you kidding me? What a silly assumption. No, you just compete where number one is safe and number two is fair. We cannot prioritize inclusion over safety and fairness. And you do that by playing in the category that matches your biological sex. So all of that to say, yes, I think a couple more contributing factors to what made me the person I am is one, having a strong family foundation, two parents who love each other, who taught me how to be an independent thinker, who taught me how to call out an injustice when I see it. And then my faith. That's a huge part in who I am. It's central really in everything that I do. Or at least I certainly try for it to be, because before anything, before standing for even objective truth, I want to stand for biblical truth, living a Christ-like life. But all of that is why I'm able to go at the speed that I do with a smile on my face, really, and an incredibly light heart.
That's awesome, Riley. All right, so let's talk about getting married. So you're young. You got married pretty young. How did you meet your husband?
So my husband, he swam at the University of Kentucky as well. I swore up and down I was never going to date a swimmer, but
Why is that?
it's just, we call it, in the swimming world, we call it swim cest, when you're, because it's the only people you're around all the time.
That's funny.
So you try not to, but it's almost impossible. But let me tell you, I could not be more grateful for my husband. He's this really cute 6'4" British guy. He's from England. He came over to the States specifically for college. So he has, now living in Nashville, like this awesome country British accent. It rocks.
That's funny.
But he's my rock. He's my constant. He is which is important in a world full of ups and downs. Having that constant will forever be my biggest support. He would do absolutely anything for me. And so I think God certainly placed him in my life at such a time. It's funny, he actually proposed to me the day after Lia Thomas and I had raced. So he had absolutely no idea what he was getting himself into.
What does
but
he think?
again, I think
what does he think of some of this? So I want to talk to you about your generation. I do want to talk about your perspective, because I think it's interesting. A lot of the people that I'm in this fight with, a lot of the other women are in their 40s. I always joke around and I say, who knew we were going to make so many new friends in our 40s? But you're becoming my friend and you're in your 20s, right? And so
Totally.
and we've got lots of new moms, 20s, 30s joining us. And so I fight for my kids and my kids' future, but I'm fighting so that you're not going to be so worried, right? And your generation isn't going to have to worry every day that they're sending their children into a school system that is teaching things that are completely antithetical to the teaching in the home, right? Or driving a wedge. So, let's talk about that, Riley.
Here's what I'll say. There are so many more people like me, at least in terms of mindset and thought process, than it seems. But people are terrified, especially my generation, younger people. People are terrified to speak the truth because unfortunately, we see the threats and the risk play out in real time. They're real a lot of times. This super loud fringe minority, you hear it all the time that this is the loud minority. It's so true, especially on college campuses. I think a lot of that was brought to light given everything that went on in the Middle East, and we saw these protests over here on college campuses. We saw people protesting, saying free Palestine from the river to the sea, yet when asked, okay, what river?
Yeah, they have no idea.
They have no idea. What sea? Okay, well, we don't really know. Well, what are you advocating for? What would you like to see Israel do? They have no idea. But I think it needed to happen in that way for people to realize the direction, one, that colleges are going. But I will say towards the end of this past semester in May, which unfortunately was when colleges were getting out, we saw this almost counter revolution, which was so awesome for me to see. Yeah. Because again, I know there's more people who think like me than what is led on. But we saw people at Ole Miss and LSU, a lot of these Southern schools. So let me just say, send your kids to the SEC.
That's right.
We saw a lot of these Southern schools, frats and different things, start to push back. And I think if there were more time in school, before graduation or before letting out, we would have seen more of this. But that gave me a lot of hope. It reinforced to me that we are here. I think day by day, as unfortunately more and more adverse situations and circumstances happen that push us to those limits, people are becoming bolder, louder, more brave and courageous in stating, the most basic of truths, advocating for the bare minimum, at least in this case, of privacy, safety, and equal opportunity. I think we're getting to that point.
So you've traveled around the country. What's been one of your favorite places to visit so far? What city have you enjoyed visiting?
Oh, what city? Well, like I said, I'm from Tennessee. I'm a little north of Nashville, where I'm fortunate that where I grew up, like I said, things have certainly changed from when I was in middle school, high school, but 99% of people where I live are in total agreement with the stand that I have taken, which is wonderful. It's certainly a blessing. And so I enjoy getting in those environments where that's not the case, where you kind of put yourself in the belly of the beast, and you're not really preaching to the choir anymore. Because what good does preaching to the choir do? You can go on Fox News all day long, but every old white man who watches Fox News already agrees with me. We need to reach that middle audience, people who are moderates, people who have young daughters who know this is instinctually, they know this is wrong, but they're hung up on being compassionate or inclusive or empathetic, or those words that they use all the time on the other side to really pull at your heartstrings. Getting to them and saying, well, what about us as young girls? Who's been compassionate to us? Is it really inclusion to ask us to smile and step aside and allow these men onto our podiums? Is that what inclusion looks like to you? And so I've seen a lot of impact that has been had in cities and states, blue states like California and New York and Michigan and Maine, things like that, where people are really desperate to hear the truth. They're looking for an outlet somewhere, but they're being denied it in virtually every realm in these states. And so I love that, not because I want hostility, not because I want controversy or anything like that, but because you're reaching people where you can be effective. And that's what this is about.
Awesome. And we were just out in Gig Harbor, Washington State. What a beautiful place Gig Harbor was. Oh my goodness, Washington State. I was like, it just breathtaking. We saw a rainbow at one point over the water. I was like, this is like something out. I think Chris Elston actually said he felt like he was in Snow White's forest.
It's so true,
like that. It was really, yeah. And we saw seals. They were telling me, oh yeah, there's orcas out in the water. So I thought that event that One Washington put on was great. Just really great information. And I did say to Chris at one point, we were on the panel, I said, can you feel the energy? It was in the night panel. And you really could feel that the people of Washington State, where I think, Riley, one of the things I've noticed from traveling is different cities have accelerated in different, in a different pace. And so the people of Seattle, people of Washington, boy, they've been dealing with these issues for quite some time, haven't they?
Yeah, of course they have, which I thought was incredibly telling, that the day after we left, after the conference concluded, a boy in Washington State wins the state championship in the women's 400 meters by a very large margin. In prelims, there was no girl with even within 20 yards, 25 yards of this boy. So I think that amped up energy that we felt it has been pent up for a while. They have leaders who don't represent them, who don't represent their values, their ideals. They have attorney generals who are failing, their governor who is failing, and people are fed up. And that's not even, take away even the gender ideology stuff, the crime, the drugs, the homelessness. There are so many other problems that they have been dealing with in these blue states, blue cities, big cities like Portland, Seattle.
Absolutely. And in Seattle, they just passed a law. They're going to allow for puberty blockers and things to be given in school-based health clinics. And they say, well, it'll take the parents' consent. But the law says informed consent is 13. So the law allows for them to do it without the parents' consent once the child is 13. And so they truly are in this. I mean, their kids are in danger in Seattle schools. It's really frightening, Riley. What do your parents think of all this? Like, everybody's always like, where are the dads, right? Where are the dads? So I can't. What's it been like for your parents?
So, like I said, I'm so fortunate for the family that I have. But my parents, they're first and foremost, they could not be more proud of me or supportive of me. But they worry. They worry about me. They worry about my safety when I travel.
Never stops.
I know. My mom drives me crazy. I'm like, Mom, I'm fine. She'll tell me, even every time I get in the car, she's like, Riley, don't be on your phone when you're driving. Make sure you buckle up. I'm like, Mom, I'm 24 years old. And she'll say, be careful. And that drives me crazy when I'll be on the phone with her. I'm at an event and she'll say, okay, Riley, be careful. I'm like, Mom, you don't have to say that. I know to be careful. But
She loves
again, I
you.
think just
That's our job, Riley. It doesn't matter how old you are. Once you have a baby, your heart lives outside of you. It is like something that you can't even explain. And so, as much as it annoys you, I promise you're going to turn around and do the exact same thing.
totally. No, I can imagine. I have a litter of puppies at my house right now, and I feel this weird like motherly instinct for them, and they're dogs. So I can only imagine when
Yeah.
you have kids of your own. But yeah, my dad, he's a former NFL player, so he's a very big guy. What the left would describe as toxic masculinity. That's my dad, a protector and a provider. And so when he found out there was a man in our locker room, you can imagine how he responded. He wanted to come down there. I mean, he had every intention of coming down there and handling it himself. To which another reason why I took the stand that I did is because I didn't want my dad in jail, and I knew if I didn't, he would. So I said, "Dad, look, I've got it. I can handle this."
Well, you know what, and we'll end on that note because you certainly can handle this, and you have shown, and you are showing young people. And I say young people because you're younger than me. You're a grown woman, but still, I think you are a role model for high school girls and college girls and kids in general and young people that, it doesn't have to be like this. And that you have to take a stand. And I shared in my talk in Washington, and I'll share again, that if you're in a room, if you're listening to this and you're thinking you're the only person that thinks that what Riley and I are saying is correct, you're wrong. Like 93% of no party affiliates in Florida agree with us. Think about that. That's a segment of the population that normally splits 50-50. But you've got almost 100% of people agreeing on this issue with us, who might disagree about other things. So this is the time to take a stand and know what a woman is, an adult human female. And Riley, I just want to thank you for being such an amazing, joyful warrior, and excited to see you in Washington at Summit. And just thankful for you and everything that you're doing.
Well, I'm thankful for you guys. Like I said, it's so empowering. It revitalizes me to see a army of moms, of women, of people, everyday concerned citizens, common sense Americans who intuitively know that men and women are different, and that parental rights matter, and that the safeguarding of children is a necessity. So you guys inspire me. I love working with you guys, and I imagine in the future we have lots more to do together,
We do.
which excites me.
We do. So follow Riley on social media. Riley, you want to quickly tell us?
Yes, my Twitter is Riley_Gaines_. Make sure you check out my new book, which is Swimming Against the Current, Fighting for Common Sense in a World That's Lost Its Mind. Of course, go more in depth about really what we talked about. So just appreciate you for having me on, Tiffany. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. And we'll see you next time, Joyful Warriors. Thanks for joining us.